Hello and welcome to the Education for Justice Global Podcast Series. Today we will talk about the role of universities and higher education in advancing the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. Why is higher education crucial for the advancement of the SDGs? What are the different ways universities have chosen to promote the SDGs? How can impact be assessed? And how important is cooperation and partnerships? I'm Bianca Kopp from the Education for Justice Initiative of the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, and I'm very honored to introduce today's panelists, Dr. Hilje van 't Land from the International Association of Universities and Mr. Cesar Wassen from Qatar University. Hilje, a warm welcome from Vienna to Paris. Thanks for taking your time to do this podcast with us. Let me start with a provocative question. Does higher education matter, and do higher education institutions have a role in advancing the SDGs?
Let me please be provocative in return. Without higher education, there will be no sustainable development whatsoever. There is a need for the higher education system to be approached as a whole, from pre-primary to lifelong learning, and higher education is a milestone in the whole process. Without higher education, there is no possibility even to look at the different challenges that we face in the most constructive way. We need the institutions to engage all the communities that are working and studying at the university, from the professors, the support staff, the students, the researchers, all of them to come on board and engage with the Sustainable Development Goals, because that is the way through which we will have the opportunity to actually engage with the Sustainable Development Goals in the most constructive and innovative way. And so, yes, there is a role for higher education institutions to advance the SDGs. And we have offered at the International Association of Universities an opportunity for universities to engage in a creative manner. We developed the International Higher Education for Sustainable Development cluster, where we invited universities from around the world to each champion an SDG and then work with universities from all around the world on that specific SDG. And I already hear your next provocative questions. Are you not then building new silos again by siloing the SDGs as such? No, it is just actually to provide universities with an opportunity to engage more fully with one of the SDGs, and there also to demonstrate how you cannot address one SDG alone, but that they are definitely at heart connected to all the other SDGs that are out there. Can I give maybe an example there of how that operates, Bianca? What would you say?
Yes, please. We are eager to hear an example.
But I would like to start maybe with SDG 16. This is indeed an SDG that links the International Association of Universities with work that the UNODC also does, and that is to build peace in the minds of people through connecting the non-connected, or to connect those that could be connected even better as they move along their work in higher education and together with other stakeholders in society. SDG 16 in the IAU Higher Education and Research Cluster for Sustainable Development is led by the University of Nairobi in Kenya, where they work together with the University of Tokyo, the University of Copenhagen, James Madison University in the US. So those 4 universities from different parts of the world, Africa, Europe, Asia, and North America, work together on projects relating to 3 major topics: to reduce violence, to ensure and develop and foster effective and transparent institutions, and thirdly, to ensure participatory decision-making at all the levels in society. So these universities work at their local level, at their institutional level. They develop joint initiatives. They embark new universities as we speak in the process. They then also connect with the society outside of their university doors, and they connect with international organizations like the UNODC. So there are these dynamics that are shaped through this innovative type of cooperation. The trend today, and this very good and positive dynamic of bringing the non-connected together and look at what the challenges are asking to look at, but in a joint effort across divides. So that is a bit to start the conversation, I would say. But yes, without higher education, no sustainable future.
Thank you, Hilke, and thank you for describing the entire process. It's very fascinating to hear that this SDG cluster is really driven by the different universities engaged in that. And I have to say, it definitely goes in line with the UN Secretary General's approach that highlights the importance that we all consider that advancing of the SDGs as our joint responsibility. It's not only the responsibility of the member states of the UN, it's not only the responsibility of us, the United Nations institutions, but it's our joint responsibility. So I'm very happy to hear how you see the perspective and how you see this. And now, Cesar, I've heard now from Hilke that also Qatar University is participating in this SDG cluster, and would like to hear from you, how do you see the role of an individual university in advancing the SDGs? Could you share your perspective and what the benefits for universities actually are to work on the SDGs? And maybe also outlining a little bit, what are the problems, what are the challenges that universities face when they decide to work on the SDGs?
Yes, thank you very much. And in fact, I'm inspired by what Dr. Van 't Lant has just shared with us, because in fact, this is. I'll start with the last part of your question that deals with the challenges. It's in fact these high expectations that are put on universities. When these SDGs went out public, there was no mention specifically about higher education in any of the SDGs, but in fact, the role of the higher education is embedded in every single one of the SDGs, maybe a majority at least. So this is basically the challenge that we are facing, is starting with these high expectations. Universities are trusted among their communities. They are perceived to be neutral, objective. So we have to stand up for this role and live up to it. The good things are definitely many, part of which were just stated. The networks of the universities active on SDGs have been really very helpful in making us understand how to proceed in terms of implementing the SDGs and transmitting the message to the next generation of leaders, because basically that's how we perceive our role to be in terms of universities. Of course, we provide the knowledge, we can provide the innovations, the solutions that might be needed to implement those SDGs, and of course, support the development of policies and what have you. But I think the main importance for the SDGs for all universities is communication. It has definitely helped us increase, or at least, channel our communication with the government, with external stakeholders, with our international partners, on something that is useful to our communities and our societies, by that helping us to achieve our mission. Of course, Qatar University is the national university. The fact that these SDGs were launched in so recently match with our strategic orientation and our new strategy gearing towards transformation of the university. By transformation, we of course had many technical issues involved, but also and mostly, to make the university as a whole globally aware of the problems, globally aware of the opportunities. That includes definitely the faculty members and the students. In terms of the faculty members, it also led us to revive and refresh our knowledge. A lot of the research that was done at universities had already been targeting some areas of the SDGs. So basically, one of the challenges is, and one of the opportunities that the SDGs provided us with, is some framework to really know what are we targeting by doing research, the purposeful and the meaningful research. And suddenly they become vital for us to understand how we can communicate with the old people and the young people about these SDGs, how we can make an impact on the research done towards the environment, towards justice, towards gender equality. This is, I think, what is the most important thing that universities benefit from SDGs, and it's here that we can definitely say that as much as the SDGs need universities, like Helix just said, I think also that universities need the SDGs, if not equally, even more, to be able to rethink their role.
Thank you, Cesar. That's an interesting perspective. So you're basically saying, yes, the universities have a big role to play in supporting the SDGs, but the SDGs framework is also a crucial and a very good tool for the universities to basically monitoring at the university level what the different universities, the different institutions are doing, what kind of research is undertaken, and the impact, or better to say, what it leads to, and providing a reference framework. So that's a very interesting perspective that you just shared with us. And Cesar, talking about impact, you're dealing a lot with that. And when I introduced you earlier, I also highlighted that you like the rankings, you have a good experience in this. How do you see how we can actually measure the impact universities have with regard to the SDGs? And maybe also, Cesar, what kind of impact are we looking at? Could you kindly give us a little bit your thoughts on what kind of impact universities have and how this can be measured?
Sure, and for that, before opening the ranking Pandora box, I would like to go back a little bit to what you're talking about, the impact, to give some tangible examples about the roles of universities, just in order not to just talk about generalities. For instance, if we take the SDG 16 that our colleague referred to previously, SDG 16 has been a great interest to us in Qatar, and the work we have done with UNODC on that provided many aspects that are that are focusing on justice, but also on peace, on ethics, on integrity, and on fighting crime in a very tangible way, and also impacting the study plans, introducing new modules, introducing an online platform for students. So we're not just talking about generalities, talking about the impact of the universities at the macro level. At the micro level, the impact that the SDGs had on universities and that the universities can have on the implementation of the SDGs is very important also. And we have witnessed this at Qatar University, where we had also, just like the IAU had this champion university, we had champion faculty members who have taken the SDG 16, for instance, and tried to dissect it and understand it and provide their colleagues and their students with a tangible way of understanding and of implementing these big, important values of integrity, of ethics, and what have you. So the University of Qatar also is not only focusing on the macro level, on helping the government and understanding the world and the global awareness, but it also is, as part of the IAU, learning from our colleagues, people that we had never thought to partner with on specific areas, just because we did not know about their work there, and that the IAU platform has provided us with knowledge about how good they are and how important what they're doing is. And of course, in transmitting this knowledge that we are gathering from the macro level to the micro level of students and teachers. So this is just to tell you a little bit about tangible examples of the impact universities might have on their communities.
Thank you, Cesar, for these very interesting examples showing how Qatar University is translating the Sustainable Development Goals into practice. But what about now impact ranking?
This is important because it, from my experience in rankings, as you just said, I never saw rankings as being a threat. I know their limitations. I criticize their limitations. I try to influence their methodology. But there is a very important aspect on rankings that I also have to acknowledge. Being also an expert on accreditation, I can tell you that accreditation is way more valuable to me. However, rankings are a catalyst that no accreditation can match. It's a catalyst for policymaking. It's a catalyst for getting grants. This is what policy makers and funders like. It's and I'm not talking about government only. I'm talking about the industry. I'm talking about the just show them a ranking, and they will directly tell them that we need this money to improve on the ranking, and you will see that you will get funds from industry very quickly. Tell them it's for accreditation. You might have to wait a few years. So that said, the ranking itself that was issued helps know how we are doing with respect to others. However, it has a big problem, which is the fact that it pulls together the efforts. So basically, in a nutshell, not to take a lot of the time, rankings, yes, an index should be put in place to tell the universities how well they are doing with respect to others, but it's not a competition against everybody else. It's a collaborative work. That's where rankings fail. When you start comparing yourself to universities in other parts of the world that do not need to work on water security, that do not need to work on eradication of poverty. I mean, you can just see this ranking, and you will see that the top 10 of the poverty eradication, no poverty SDG, are coming from the Western world. And I would respect maybe that, but I don't see how they can impact SDG 1 and the same effect that the university in the South Hemisphere, in the Southern Hemisphere, is impacting these universities. So that's my problem with the ranking. But to give them credit, they provided us with a way to measure or to at least document the data. This is the good thing about it. By submitting this data, we are documenting our efforts. And at some point, they will be useful for the United Nations, hopefully, that will ultimately need to have a framework to measure the impact. I hope this is clear.
Cesar, thank you. And yes, you gave me now a lot of food for thought about the ranking and the pros and cons of the ranking. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Hilche, over to you. How do the universities that participate in your classes, how do they measure their own impact? I mean, do you have annual reports? What kind of methodology are you using?
Thank you. I think a next podcast will be a discussion with Cesar on the other topic that we just broached. How do universities taking part in the HESD cluster measure what they do? Indeed, they do that through a looser process, and maybe we could strengthen that a bit. We've just been working with an international team in the context of the High-Level Political Forum and the HESI initiative, the Higher Education for Sustainability initiative, at defining how to improve measurements tools, measurements methods, and we hope that that document can be released sometime soon in the fall. Because it has tried to look at all the other mechanisms that do exist, including rankings, and how each of the mechanisms that are available out there could be used to the full by universities so that it is not impacting negatively on their capacity to act. Measuring does take an enormous amount of time. And when you want to measure the impact at the level of the SDGs and what their engagement is and their role, one of the challenges there is also to measure impact when it comes to social dimensions or the things that do not fit what Cesar called the numbers, the capacity to measure what is measurable actually. And the SDG require a lot of those other non-directly measurable means. So we are looking at how to enhance the capacity to express the impact of the work that universities do in a different way. So for now, it uses words and it uses reports, it uses the opportunity to list, to explain, to publish on different platforms, including on the IAU HESD portal, where we list some 800 university initiatives, yet it lists them. It doesn't measure the impact necessarily. And that is what we are looking at now. What next in terms of impact measurement, so that the universities that are embarking on the SDG train have a better opportunity to also showcase what they do and enhance their capacity to secure what Cesar also alluded to, finances, grants, funds from industry, because that's the world of business that requires these data and numbers to be able to say, okay, we will fund this because we can see that the impact will be higher, and where funding is part of the equation, you need to see what you funded for, and if it was useful. So that is what universities are trying to do, better analyze what they do in order to better see and say and express and share how they contribute to enhancing the capacity of the many to address the challenges that we face. Publications, reports, exchange, meetings, that is the best way that we've found for now to make the process as lean as possible, dynamic, and positive as well.
Thank you, Jorge. Sounds very familiar to me. It's similar to how the reporting of the United Nations looks like, basically showing the member states what we are doing by issuing national annual reports, etc. Helge, you have said that universities need to better analyze what they do. So going back to what Cesar has said before, the important role of communication and the example that Cesar gave with regard that, using the SDG framework helps the universities also to communicate better to the governments, for instance. Do you think this might even be more important in the future? We know already now, because of the pandemic, there will be less funding for higher education in some of the countries. Do you think universities need to report better back so that the different national institutions also see the core role universities have with regard to the SDGs?
This is a very intriguing question, especially nowadays in the context of COVID-19. One of the opportunities that this very disastrous pandemic, in many regards, has offered, one of the opportunities was for universities also to show the world how important they are to do proper research, to provide for real data, to really analyze what is being shared, done, what is required to address the very health crisis that we face. And now already universities are also involved a lot in working on opportunities to address the economic crisis, the social crisis that is popping up everywhere, the cultural crisis that is a very important one that also derives from the pandemic. So universities are extremely important in bringing together their expert communities and think about solutions to be designed for the future, the immediate future, the medium term, and the long term. And so they do come together. They come together with all the stakeholders, and the policymakers see that they need to rely on their expertise to really find the solutions that make sense, count, and will make the difference for the future. So this opportunity needs to be maximized in the future. The other part of the question was, do universities need to report better? I think there are so many reports out there. There are so many publications that should be telling in itself how important universities are. I am more convinced that now is the time for policymakers to invite the higher education community to the table when they debate challenges and are looking for new opportunities. It is happening at this time of the pandemic, but it should be done more, because more reporting, more documents, more this, that. I have sometimes the impression that there is also a real time challenge in digesting all the reportings that are out there. And that is where we are at risk of oversimplifying certain things, because the policymakers don't have the time, just simply the human time, the manpower to digest all the information that would come out of reporting mechanisms. So I would see more benefit from the inclusion of the higher education voice in many of the dynamics that are out there and seeking the best possible solutions. but still to bring together the decision makers and the university representatives more strongly so. And I believe in that dialogue nowadays, more even than the reporting or the monitoring mechanisms, because universities have shown how important they are for their societies. So I believe that a lot is out there in terms of already reporting, but now is the time to really bring the leaders of higher education to the table of the decision makers more and more than was the case in the past. I hope that answers your question. Back to you.
Hilke, thank you. That definitely answers the question. And yes, as you know, I think we're on the same page on this. The Education for Justice initiative has always highlighted the important role that higher education plays and how important it is to bring higher education institutions, universities from around the world to the table to discuss with policymakers how to address issues that the world is facing. So finally, my last question to both of you, and related to this, and this is a question I also struggle a little bit to find an answer. We have discussed today that, and we all, the three of us agree that reaching the SDGs is a joint responsibility. And it's not, as I said before, the responsibility of states or the United Nations, but our responsibility as global citizens, as parents, as educators, as researchers. But how do we really address what Hilke described as a silo? How do we really address these silo approaches where the universities are at one side, the policymakers in their own bubble, the United Nations and the different experts in the other bubble? How can we really bridge the gap? And how can we leave this silo approach that we are often in behind us? Cesar, would you like to respond to this question very shortly, 1 to 2 minutes max?
Concerning your question, Bianca, I think there is one answer to the students. This is our only hope, our only, our flame and our battle has to be through the students. This is how we will be able to, bridge the gap and overcome all the hurdles that we're having. And this is how we are proceeding, by promoting, student volunteering activities, by having them address the government entities, the global forums like the United Nations, starting from the model United Nations up till the actual United Nations, policymakers, lobbying policymakers. This is, I think, what the universities can bring to the table. It is the fact that they hold the future leaders of the society. They hold the intellectual people, those people who will be policymakers themselves. So they can definitely help in bridging the gap by promoting student engagement in the SDGs and pushing the students to voice their concerns and to participate in all the efforts that are being done around the university, but also around the world for the SDGs. So I think that, to answer shortly and surely, I would relay this to the students, this effort to the students, of course, while guiding them through it and helping them achieve the goal.
Thank you, Cesar. Hilke, now back to you. Do you want to add something to this final question? How can we leave the silo approach behind?
Thank you for giving me the floor for this important question. I would like to recall that we celebrated Nelson Mandela International Day just this weekend. And one of his most famous quotes that we need to recall today is, he said, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." And this goes indeed in the direction already stipulated by Cesar, that we need to work with all the stakeholders within the higher education community, in particular with the students. And to work with the students even better, we need to also work with all the staff. We need to equip the teaching, the research community with any tools that they would need and should be put at their disposal to help develop the dynamics towards engaging with the SDGs in the future. So that will help in the future, because the students are the future decision makers. They will be the ones who will take on the challenges in a different way. They will be different decision makers, we hope. They will have the capacity to transform the world in which they will operate. And hopefully they will be those change agents, forgetting about gaps between different silos. As well, to not wait for them to be out there and have the capacity to act very strongly as decision makers. It will be very important to continue our work today to bridge gaps between the silos within institutions by strongly fostering interdisciplinary, intercultural, and multi-stakeholder approaches, by ensuring that there is continuous debates on everything that we do and asking the question, why, what for, to what end, so that we see the resonance of everything that is being done inside the university with even more impact at the local and global levels. Then as well, this gap idea calls for better connections, even at the government level, between different kinds of ministers. The Minister of Education needs to work more closely with the Minister of the Economy, the Minister of the Environment, the Minister of Justice and Law. And so by also fostering those dynamics already at the early stage within the education system, by building bridges between law departments, social sciences, humanities, mathematics, all the different parts that form the capacity of our societies to transform, will be at the heart of everything that we do. At the IU, we also strongly believe that these different points need to be worked on a continuous basis, and that it needs to be connected to the global dynamics. And you mentioned them, Cesar and Bianca as well. We will be part and parcel in the development of dynamics at the UNESCO World Conference on Higher Education, scheduled for 2021. We will bring the higher education community there to work with the policymakers. There's the UNESCO World Conference on Education for Sustainable Development planned for Berlin in 2021. And then there is the IAU General Conference to take place in Dublin in 2021 as well, where we will reaffirm the importance of the work of higher education for sustainable development together with all the universities from around the world, and bring decision makers there as well, policy makers from all the world regions. And we will be very pleased to pick that up and to expand our capacity to act when we meet at Qatar University in 2022, because the University of Qatar will be our wonderful host at that point in time. And I also very strongly believe in that other dimension that Cesar also mentioned, and I think we both made that case quite strongly. We need to lobby to policymakers, and we can do that together by bringing on board the leadership at all the levels, the leadership of the students and the student bodies all around the world, the leadership of staff, the leadership of the researchers, and the leadership of institutions as representing the communities that an institution actually forms. And it's by connecting all those levels that we will be able to really consider transforming our world for the better.
Thank you, Hilke. That was inspirational indeed. And thank you to both of you, to you, Cesar and Hilke. A big thank you from Vienna for sharing your thoughts with us and your experience. The Education for Justice initiative aims to inspire change together, and we acknowledge that higher education matters and has an important role to play with regard to the advancement of the SDGs. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime is proudly partnering with hundreds of universities from around the world to advance the SDGs, and I think today's talk has clearly showed how important it is that we partner and that we jointly work on the SDGs implementation. A big thank you again to Hilke van Land and to Cesar Weyssen.
Thank you for this quality exchange. It is always a pleasure as well to debate higher education with Cesar Weyssen and you, also in the context of our joint effort to reach the global goals as identified in Agenda 2030. Thank you.
Thank you, Bianca. I really enjoyed this session with Dr. Van Land as usual in discussing these important matters. Hopefully things will go back to normal soon and we'll be able to host UNODC and IAU in one event in Doha. See you soon and stay safe.
The Education for Justice initiative is part of the global program for the implementation of the Doha Declaration, funded by the State of Qatar. Tune in for the next episode of this E4J Global Podcast Series that will be published soon on our Education for Justice platform. In order to not miss any of our next podcasts or opportunities for higher education institutions, please register yourself at our E4J platform. Let's inspire change together.